Hi everyone, I'm Lisa Brentnall, Chief Investment Officer at Clover Risk Funding, and I welcome you to episode 7 of In Clover. Today's podcast, we're going to be talking about all things litigation funding through the lens of the incredible women at Clover Risk. At Clover, we do things a little bit differently here, and today is no exception. There is no script, there's no formalities, could go anywhere. So join us for the ride, strap in, we're going to have some fun. Now, for some background as a welcome to these amazing women, when I started at Clover earlier this year, I had never had the privilege of working with any of these women before. In fact, I had only spoken to one of them on a handful of times. But it didn't take me long to discover that all three of these women are incredibly intelligent, experienced, practical, and just lovely, lovely people. But above that, they also really have a deep understanding of the litigation funding business, but also more importantly, of our clients' business. They really understand how clients want to use litigation funding in order to achieve their own business goals and obligations. And I feel incredibly privileged to be a part of their team. So by way of welcome, I'm very honoured to introduce Nicole Burns, Head of Western Australia and Southern Australia in Clover. We have Sarah Hamilton, Legal Counsel, and we have Brooke Darlington, who is our Finance and Insolvency Expert. So welcome, ladies.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa. What a nice introduction.
So by way of kickoff, I think today we start with everybody's had such a unique journey and different path to getting to where you are today. I'd be interested to know what led you to actually get into litigation funding generally, and then the extra path that you took to get to Clover. Anybody want to kick off?
Do you want to go first? Sure, why not? I did the private practice in litigation and insolvency for about 14 years. Mm-hmm. And then, had a child and realised maybe this isn't really compatible with litigation. So I went to FEG, where I work with Stephen and Nicole. So I was there for about a year and then had a second child, and then after maternity leave came and joined Clover, mm-hmm. which has, been an amazing experience.
So how long have you been with Clover now, Sarah?
When did I start? May last year.
Mm.
So, about a year and a half.
Yeah. Okay. So you've been pretty much involved in the business from very early on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think, Stephen had obviously been running it with Neil for about a year before I joined. Mm. And then we've sort of, got thrown in. We had a podcast and the photo shoot first day with here's the 20 funding agreements that need to go out.
Yeah. Sarah's the OG.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you've come in and fixed all our filing and email systems.
Well, I think Nick came in and saved the day, with all of our...
I think I started like 4 months after you, and it was just trying to figure out how Stephen and Sarah had run for so long without any help.
Yeah.
An enormous amount of effort went in. Similar to Sarah, I came from a private practice background. Mm. And again, I actually interviewed you, Sarah.
You did, yes.
I think for FEG. I don't want to think how long ago that was.
Yeah.
So we had worked together before, and Stephen as well. And similar to Sarah, litigation funding is that great balance between what we love doing, which is litigating and looking at different areas of law, working with different clients, but also having time for your family. And
nice to not be the person who's got to stay up till midnight the night before a court hearing. You could just out of court.
Give it to someone else. Yes.
Yeah. So Nick, how did you get into litigation funding?
So I was working at a large international law firm, and I got to that point where you're looking at, do I want to continue on to partnership, or is there something more to what I want to do with my career? And I happened to know someone who was working at FEG in funding, and she really sold it as it's the best of both worlds. It's the complexity and the challenge of insolvency and different types of litigation, but also, you're getting flexibility of working in government and having better hours, greater amount of files, but less on the tools work.
Mm. So it was sold to you on that basis. Has that been the reality?
It has absolutely lived up to reality. Yeah. That and more. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm. What about you, Brooke? You've had a very different path to get to where you are today.
Yes, I started insolvency as a graduate insolvency accountant back in 2011, in fact, with Neil and Stephen. back when I saw Neil as like the insolvency Jesus. I just thought he was so cool, calm and collected.
He still is.
Solve any issue with just water off a duck's back. And I was actually in Stephen's team for my last 2 years at a Big Four firm, then went and spent the last 6 years in more of a boutique insolvency firm doing unsecured work. But I got to a point similar to Nicole where I was at that associate director level, about to submit my application to get my liquidator's ticket. And it just wasn't sitting right with me. I didn't know if that's how my future looked. And the thing that I love most about insolvency is the litigation, the investigations, and actually running claims. And it just so happened, I've continued to catch up with Stephen for lunch through the years, and he was looking for something. I jokingly said, "Oh, I'll take it."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Come on."
Yeah.
And to echo what Sarah and Nicole said, it really is just the best of both worlds. When anyone asks, I can still be involved and collaborate with the insolvency practitioners, look at the investigations, discuss strategy, but at the end of the day, they go away and do all the work. And it's not me up until 1, 2 in the morning.
Don't lie, it is you sometimes.
It is something.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's right.
I've only been around since March. I'm still trying to get that side away, but it's been a great change and I'm loving every minute of it. And probably the thing I'm loving most is just getting the opportunity to work with all these amazing insolvency practitioners who I ordinarily wouldn't have had an opportunity to work with because I would have been on joint appointments with them and oftentimes in opposition. So it's been really interesting and a learning experience to see how all these amazing people operate.
And I think that's the great thing about litigation funding. So when you're a lawyer in private practice, you don't get to meet on a personal level a lot of the other lawyers. They're generally on the other side.
Yeah.
And same with when you're in insolvency, you don't really get to work with a lot of the other insolvency practitioners. But as a funder, you get to work with everybody.
Yeah.
It's great. One thing I'm really curious to know about, Sarah and Nicole, you had history with government funder, with FEG. I'd be interested to know, what do you find the difference between working with a government funder as opposed to a private funder?
I mean, I'll go first. I think there's a couple of really different things about government funding and private funding. One is we obviously worked at FEG, where you could only fund things which had a FEG advance of a substantial amount. So it was a very limited kind of funnel for the types of funding you could look at. Whereas in private funding, short of something that you're just not confident in, we can fund anything. We can fund any type of case. It doesn't have to have a FEG debt or any kind of thing. So it's a bit more open, it's a bit more flexible. And I think the other very obvious thing between government and private funding is just it's a lot more flexible. It's a lot faster pace. You're not working in this large machine where there's lots of different policies and procedures and different layers it has to go through. So the time it takes from getting a request for funding through to actually signing that funding agreement is vastly reduced. And I'm sure you'll agree, Sarah, it's from months down to days, purely because we are operating in a much smaller, more nimble function.
I think you're more flexible with what you can offer. Like it's not. Like you can come to us with a bespoke thing that you want done, and we can find a way to make that work. Yeah, it's just that flexibility that.
And we can take things that just look good or we're a bit excited about.
And that's what I do love about. There's so many times I have seen files come across that we say, doesn't really meet my criteria for what they're asking for, but what can we do to help in some way? It may not necessarily be everything that they need, but what can we do to tailor the solution to make it work?
I mean, we've definitely got with those where we've like, okay, we can just pay for outlays or we can just give adverse costs. The quantum of the claim doesn't justify us being all in, but we want to support the team. And even like we've got ones where we don't even give funding, but just being involved, going to a settlement conference has been enough to get a great result for everyone. So I think we can add value in different ways.
I mean, I can see one advantage that FEG does have in that they can provide funding for matters where it's purely out of public interest as opposed to driven by profit, which is, one of the constraints that private funders have. And on those lines, I've been to a few seminars lately with judges on the panel and so forth, and there has been a lot of criticism about funders and lawyers and this lack of recognition from their perspective of making sure that enough of the funds go back to the client and that a lot of the fees and so forth get chewed up by lawyers and funders. Brooke, you're fairly new to the funding industry and you worked a long time in insolvency. I'd be really interested to get your take on that, whether you agree, disagree, or...
To be honest, I probably had quite a negative view of litigation funding, purely just from the perspective that I need to report to creditors on what benefit there is to them. And I typically experienced receiving quotes from funders where it was automatically 45, 50% off the table. And I found it really difficult to explain to creditors that scenario. The difference about Clover is it is bespoke. We know insolvency, we understand the duties and obligations placed on practitioners to deal with litigation generally, but also to have a key focus on what benefit a creditor is actually receiving. So in that respect, I love what we do here. But I think it's still an education process from our perspective.
Yeah, I agree. And I think too, one thing seems to be a focus for us is when we put together the initial funding package, one of the main criteria or considerations we have is if the matter resolves for X amount and these are our fees, how much will go back to the client? And we need to make sure that that there is a fair proportion that goes back to them, that the resolution sum is not just being taken up by lawyers.
And what Nicole said about our ability to be nimble, if we get to a settlement scenario and the numbers don't quite work, we have the ability to shift at that stage to make sure we get a deal done for everyone and that everyone benefits versus the alternative.
Absolutely. So I think in that context too, can you maybe explain to people how it works? Like, how does it work between the lawyers, the funders, and the claimant? How do we all work together? I
see it as we're a team. We're all on the same page. You've got to have that trust between everyone. We're an extra set of hands. Like as I said, we've all done it from either the legal side or the accounting side or the funding and legal side. So we can add input, but it's a team effort and you've got to have that trust. So we work with practitioners that we know and we trust and we respect their decisions and their judgment. And I think that's what makes it work.
When it comes down to it, I think insolvency is an art. It's an art of understanding people and their motivations, and the strategy aspect is huge. And the good thing about Clover is we have the insolvency background, we have the legal background, and we're just an extra value add to the practitioners and the lawyers on the file.
That's right. I think I completely resonate with what Sarah and Brooke are both saying. It's about trust. It's about the relationship. But at the very beginning, having that conversation, like, what is the end game here? Do we need to be prepared to go all the way to trial? I think sometimes as funders, there's this idea that we'd all love to settle in the first 6 months. Reality is you need to be prepared to go to trial. The lawyers, the practitioner in an insolvency matter, we all have to be on the same page. Are we prepared to get there? What does it look like? How much time is it going to take? It's being honest and upfront. Think about what your goals are, and especially for private clients as well. I recall funding a private client who was an individual, and it was as much about the principle of it and the emotion behind it, just understanding where they're coming from. It's not just about the money. It's about, what do they actually want to get out of this? And it's that conversation, I think, that's so important.
Yeah. So do you have a particular favourite file where it really highlighted the benefit of litigation funding and how it can assist people?
Definitely. And this comes from, and I'm sure Brooke and Sarah had this before as well, in private practice, you have these amazing files, clients with these extremely strong claims, which you can't run because they don't have the money to put in trust. So I've had that exact instance where it was an unjust enrichment claim. It was the youngest brother as a family of 2 siblings, and he had been, from a very young age, emotionally and financially taken advantage of by his eldest brother, who was the only educated person in the entire family, the only one that had been to university. And it got to a point where on the day of his wedding, he realized he didn't have access to his bank account and he couldn't actually share anything with his wife, which they realized. And so we ended up funding a case of unjust enrichment where he literally did not have the funds to run this matter to a full trial. It was actually going to a full 10-day trial. And a few of the other funders weren't comfortable with this sort of matter. There was no money in trust. The lawyers wouldn't run it on spec. And the only option was to go to a private funder who was willing to put the money in and take the risk on what was a very, very emotional, very difficult case.
Yeah.
So, I mean, having been in that position where you can't help these people, it was really important to have that conversation and make sure we all knew, what does the client want out of this? What does the funder want? Are we on the same page?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's quite rewarding, I think, as a funder when it is that personal connection. And I remember I had one matter where there was an elderly lady. She was about 90 years old. She was a widow living in a fairly decent-sized house on her own that she was trying to upkeep. And there was a natural disaster. And she was basically living in 2 rooms of her house. The other rooms in the house were unlivable. She'd made a claim on her insurance and they had offered her a small amount saying, yeah, we've had builders inspect it and it's going to cost this much to repair, take this offer, sign a deed of release and we're done here. And her lawyer convinced her to go and see a litigation funder, and we were able to help her to, the claim didn't even go to court. It ended up going to expert determination, which was a much more economical way of doing it in this particular instance. And at the end of the day, she was awarded 10 times more than what the insurer had originally offered her, which goes to show how much she was being undercut. Yes. And, now she's able to live in every room of her house as opposed to potentially 3. So I think that was incredibly rewarding for me and really highlighted the impact that litigation funding can have.
Yeah.
So
it's a big access to justice. It gives people the opportunity to have their case heard when they otherwise wouldn't get that opportunity. So
that's exactly right.
It does. And I think having a funder who knows the area of law which the claim is in, it gives you that boost of confidence. Like, do I actually have a good claim? The lawyers are telling me I do, but having that second layer of lawyers and insolvency practitioners saying, look, yes, we have confidence. We think this is going to get the return you're looking for. And I think that's a huge thing.
Yeah, we're putting money on the line here.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so true. I've had so many people say to me, over the years, is that, I'm so glad you're funding it because it just gives me the self-assurance that I've got a good claim.
Yeah.
I think it's particularly helpful when the lawyers have been, it's like it's been a long, hard grind over a number of months and years and you're so caught up in the detail, getting a funder, and even if it's just to take an initial look, that additional perspective can just open everyone's eyes to new opportunities and new options.
Yeah. Nick, you're head of Western Australia, South Australia. I'd be interested to know, do you see any differences over there in the terms of the type of matters that people are requesting funding for or how they approach funding?
Definitely. So I think WA is obviously a much smaller market than any of the eastern states. So there is, particularly in an insolvency sense, it's a much smaller, tighter market, but it's very collegiate. Everyone kind of knows everyone. You can't behave in a way where you damage your relationships with potential future clients or people that you're going to have a working relationship with. So I think that's really important and often misunderstood. On the other side, I find in WA, and this is not just insolvency, this is across the board, we are very litigious. We love a good court claim. So that for such a small market, we do have a lot of litigation. I mean, Brooke, we were just talking earlier, Section 477 2B applications, very often we go straight to court. Practitioners will bypass creditors, go straight to court, just get it done. The courts are very used to that. That's very, very common. So I think just being prepared to litigate anything and everything, which isn't helped by the fact that there is a lot of intergenerational wealth. Obviously, the mining and resource industry injects a lot of money in, so there is a lot of money that can go into any and all claims you can think of.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go left field here.
Gosh.
No.
Terrified.
I do this a bit. So I have found in my experience that, obviously the funding industry is quite small. It's a pretty niche market. There's not too many funders in Australia, but there seems to be a growing trend of lawyers in private practice and potentially more insolvency practitioners now looking at wanting to get into the litigation funding industry. Any tips that you might have for, as to how they can approach that or things that they can do to prepare themselves?
My first response is anyone in insolvency, you should not do it. It's not good for you. I don't want anyone else joining me.
Steady competition.
But coming from an insolvency background, and I'm still finding this and I'm still working through this. It's a big mindset shift. It's very hard to be so on the tools all day, every day, being intimately familiar with every aspect of the investigations in the file, and then just not. We obviously get all the information, we review all the information, we collaborate day in and day out, but there's just always going to be an additional detail that you might not be aware of. And I'm still finding it difficult to learn how to know that everything's okay and everyone's thought of these things. And but other than that, I think that anyone coming in really needs to know that it's a people game. And unless you have the commercial experience, how different stakeholders are motivated and how they work, it's going to be a challenge. So get some experience under your belt.
Yeah, I think that's a big issue, to have the experience, because then you've got the knowledge when someone comes to you and says, like, I've got a breach of director's claims, like, you know what that is. You're not, okay, let me open up my corporation. Section 180, like, to know the case, and then people have the confidence in you when they speak to you that you know what you're talking about. I think that would be what I'd recommend to people.
I think that's right. I think, like, don't skip the first chapter. Like, get that experience under your belt. Because you want to, I think what gives us the edge is that instinct, and you can't teach that. I mean, it's the fact that we've worked in different industries before. It just means when things come to you, you can make a very well-informed recommendation, both to whoever your investment committee is and to the client as well. Like, this is a good idea because, and having that behind you rather than just, being straight out of university and just not knowing what is good and what isn't and what's important.
Yeah. It's even sometimes you can even add stuff like a claim might come to us as A, and we'd be like, well, what about you run it as B? Whereas if you don't have that experience, you're just going to be blindly following.
That's right.
However they want to run it, so you can actually add.
I think it's often, a brief will come in and you just get an initial gut feel about how things are proceeding.
And I think that's right. You don't need both experience, but either some experience in insolvency or some experience in private practice. Just, you can always pick up the other, but you've got to have either one of them, I think, just to. Now, we all had dreams as children as to what we were going to be when we grew up. I'm assuming that nobody here at the table dreamt of being a litigation funder, as fun as it is. What was your dream as a child? What were you going to be when you grew up?
I think when I was really little, it was to be a dolphin trainer. Like, I don't know. I feel like all young girls had that dream.
Like a SeaWorld type thing.
I
can picture this.
And then this is showing my age. I watched My Cousin Vinny, the movie. I don't know. Lisa's probably the only one.
Never heard of it.
Yes, I've heard of it.
And from ever since then, I wanted to be a lawyer.
Yeah, really?
So, there's something about that movie. And I'd forgotten actually about that until randomly on my Facebook, like a clip from My Cousin Vinny came up. I'm like, oh, man, I love that movie. And that was where it all came from.
At least it wasn't Liar Liar with Jim Carrey.
That's right.
It was like Ally McBeal, Boston Legal.
Yeah, that was a great show. Yeah, I loved that.
But I didn't even know litigation funding, it wasn't a thing back when we started.
No.
Yeah, it's true.
Definitely glad I found out about it.
I have to apologise. I wouldn't be true to myself if I wasn't having a bit of a diabetic emergency. I don't know if you're hearing the beeping. I've just got to stop it.
I'll take the spotlight off you, Brooke. I feel like I'm the weird one here. Everyone has very sensible career aspirations as a child. I was that kid that was really into like viruses and like pandemics and really weird stuff.
Yeah.
So, I just obsessed with viruses, microbiology. The only reason I didn't go into science was my mathematical skills are absolutely horrific. So I don't think I could actually qualify to get into a microbiology course. And that's how I ended up in law. I was like, well, I'm good at writing, so that'll do. Kind of how it ended. I could have very easily become a scientist and not be here.
No, the viruses comes in handy with the daycare.
Yeah, that's right.
I wanted to be behind the microscope, not
dealing with a new one every week.
Suffering from the virus. Yeah.
So how did you go during COVID? Did you do a whole heap of reading into it? Were you fascinated by the whole thing?
I listened to all the TED Talks available on COVID-19. I also had a newborn at the time, so I had a lot of time on my hands. There was a lot of podcasts, a lot of TED Talks. I thought I was an expert on COVID, and then I caught it, and I'm like, you don't need to know anything except that sucks.
Outbreak, the movie I love. You've obviously watched that.
That is fantastic.
That is a good movie.
Yes.
100%.
Yeah. What about you, Brooke?
When does kid being a stop? Like, when does being a kid
Yeah,
stop?
that's very true. What do you want to be when you grow up?
When I grow up, now I would love to get into neuroscience and behavioural sciences and all that fun stuff. I find it absolutely fascinating. Yeah. I listen to multiple podcasts all hours every night. As a kid, I wanted to be a marine biologist for a little bit. I was a massive nerd, and my mum would buy us scrapbooks and I'd assign myself projects. And but then that transition, I wanted to be a dietitian, a pharmacist, and then still I wouldn't mind at maybe in retirement I'll go back to do neuroscience.
How did you
My
go
retirement
from
would be
being
travelling the world, not doing neuroscience.
I'm a nerd. I can't help it.
So how did you go from wanting to do neuroscience and then you did nutrition and so forth? How did you then get into insolvency?
Well, I'm from a small town in Hervey Bay. They have a university, but they didn't do anything really outside teaching, nursing and business and commerce.
Yeah.
So I was 16 when I graduated school. I was far too young in my mind to move from Hervey Bay to Brisbane to do uni. I just wasn't up to it. And so I thought I'd do a year at uni. I ended up picking commerce, ended up majoring in marketing and accounting, ended up with an accounting degree. And I just sort of never did that diversion back after the first year like I planned.
Well, I think if you were ever going to have a career change, it would have to be as an artist. If anybody has ever seen scribble, they are pieces of art. It's unbelievable.
I'm a 6-year-old. I like colouring in.
Okay, final question. You're at high tea with a girlfriend. Do you reach for sweet or savoury first, and is there anything that you just won't touch?
I've got to go savoury. I've got to work my way up. It's like when I had breakfast at the lounge the other day. I'm like, I have to have my savoury before I can have my sweet.
No, this is where we disagree. So we had a buffet breakfast at the Ritz-Carlton for, I don't know, some insolvency conference. And I'm the person that it's like 7 a.m. That cookie. Don't care about the eggs. It's the cookies.
Yeah. What about you, Brooke?
Savoury.
Yeah.
All day.
Yeah.
What's yours, Lisa?
Oh, I've got a sweet tooth. I try to get rid of it. I try as hard as I can, but when it's sitting in front of me, like at morning tea this morning, those donuts, they were calling my name. What do you do? But, well, thank you, ladies. It's been very enjoyable. Thanks for joining us today on episode 7 of In Clover. Hope to do it again at some point. But thank you.
Cheers.
And cheers.
Oh, no, I'm out. Cheers.
You drink that.